the turbo. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my turbo, which probably not many people know, and in fact I don't think I've ever shared it on YouTube. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name's Steph and welcome to Steph AB TV. Now in this specific video I'm going to be telling you how you can get your Abarth to 250 horsepower and the best modifications that you're going to need to get there. Now first things first, let's aim for 300 likes on this video and let me know in the comments below what your favourite modification is, whether it's on an Abarth or your own individual car which is nothing related to Abarth. Let me know what it is. Love to hear from it in the comments below. The other point is, if I mention anything that you think is incorrect, please make sure to let me know in the comments below so that everybody who watches the video can see in the comments if I made a mistake. But I'm pretty clued up about this topic because I've spent a lot of time modifying my car, so let me share that with you now. Now I'm going to run through the specific things that you're going to need to get your car to 250 horsepower, and the biggest one of all is obviously going to be the turbo, so make sure you watch until the end of the video where I'm going to give you all the different kind of turbo options, talk to you a little bit about my own turbo, which is something I have not particularly done before. I'll give you more information about that shortly. Now 250 horsepower in an Abarth sounds absolutely ridiculous, and believe me it is, and everybody wants noises and sounds like this one. But I think it's really important to note that the 250 bhp figure is something that, whilst a lot of people want, doesn't necessarily make the car any better than something at 230 horsepower or 235, because the reality is, in those kind of cars, when they're so light anyway, you don't really notice that much of a difference. Now a lot of people will tend up power chasing and say they need that 250 figure, and I'll be honest, I was one of those, but I particularly wanted 250 just for... I've just dropped my phone. I hope it hasn't broken. Now 250 horsepower is a figure that a lot of us want to achieve in our little Abarth 595s, 500s or whatever small hot hatch you have, because the power to weight ratio actually means that the car is ridiculously quick. However, I think it's really important to note that the power itself, so the figure, the 250 bhp figure, isn't always the thing that people should be chasing. I've been guilty of it in the past. I've wanted to achieve 250 horsepower, and mainly because it helps me with YouTube. People do searches for 250 bhp Abarth. They don't necessarily do searches for 248 bhp Abarth, but that's just my own personal opinion and preference. But the thing is, it's all about the power delivery. Now you may have a 230 horsepower Abarth that actually delivers more torque, and it delivers it in a more progressive way than one that's running 250, so it's not always about the numbers. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of giving you the best modifications you can get to achieve 250 horsepower, I'm going to start with intakes. Now a good intake is something that you're going to definitely need. The intake is what's going to be sucking in all of that cold air and pumping it straight into the inlet of your turbo. Now there's a few options available for the Abarths, and one of those in particular, the one I've got on mine, is a forge intake. The forge intake specifically is drilled into the scuttle, which means it is literally sucking air from the moment it hits the front of the car when you're driving down the road, and it's coming in straight through the scuttle. There are other options, and I've seen people go down the route of, for example, an Aura intake, which actually goes down into the bumper and you're sucking up the air from down below. Some people have said that's a great thing to do. Others have said it's not necessarily the best thing to have because it might be sucking in hot air if you're sitting right behind a car that's pumping out exhaust fumes. The other one available is the GTT induction kit, and this one here, I think, in my opinion, it's not the greatest induction kit. The reason being, it sits right above the engine bay itself, and when it sits directly above the engine bay, it's going to suffer from things like heat soak, particularly if you haven't got a front mount intercooler. But the reality is, you don't necessarily have to go down those routes of an actual individual brand or company offering you an intake. People have made their own. People literally have just pulled a silicone hose, some sort of carbon in there, and a filter at the end, and Bob's your uncle, you've got yourself an intake. Then we get onto the subject of intercoolers, and the purpose of the intercooler is to help cool down the air, make it more dense for the moment it hits the engine in terms of combustion, I think. Help me below, guys, give me a definition of what exactly the intercooler is supposed to do. But for the Abarth, you've got a couple of options. The most popular by far is the Airtech intercooler. It's the one that pretty much everybody goes for within the Abarth community. I've got one on mine, but in order to fit the Airtech, you have to effectively cut the under tray out. or at least they cut the undertray out on mine, and some people have said they didn't have to cut the undertray out on mine, so yeah. The other two options you've got are a Forge intercooler as well as a Aura intercooler. Both do the job, all three do the job, but on my specific car it's an Airtech intercooler. Then we get onto the subject of exhaust. Now, when I hit 250 bhp in my car, as you can probably tell by this clip here, I was using a Monza exhaust, but in order for me to free up that airflow from the back of the turbo heading all the way out, because airflow is key in turbo cars, I went down the decat route, but because the decat specifically was way too loud, I ended up putting a 200 cell sport cat right in the center section of the car. So you do need to have some sort of a decat or sports cat to give you that additional breathing thing, space, whatever it is, but the turbo will perform better when it's been able to freely pump air out the back of the exhaust. Most of you guys will know that right now I currently have a power motive exhaust with a valve, and I didn't get that exhaust specifically because I wanted more power. I got the exhaust with the ability to quiet it down, and I love the sound of it. The Monza exhaust will get you 250 bhp because the single most important part of the whole of this combination is the turbo, and we'll touch on that very shortly. And when you decide to chuck in a larger turbo into these cars, you're going to naturally need to pump more fuel into the engine, and you're going to do that by going down the route of larger injectors. Now on my car I've got VXR 380cc or 390cc, I can't remember, but 380cc VXR injectors which add more fuel into the car, which obviously helps the whole combustion process. So then once you've got your intake, you've got your intercooler, you've got your operated injectors, you've got your breather mods for the exhaust, so your decat or your sport cat, you then need your turbo, and once all of those are in, who do you go to help with the remap? Well, if you live in the UK, particularly you live in the southeast, Tune4 Performance they are amazing at what they do. They have literally mapped hundreds of Abarths, and they were the company basically that sit right next to Pro Alpha, or before Pro Alpha decided to go. And even when Pro Alpha were there, they were the ones who would do the mapping for Pro Alpha. So realistically, Tune4 Performance, regardless of Pro Alpha being here or not, have always been remapping Abarths, so they know pretty much exactly what they're doing. They remapped my car, and they've remapped pretty much a number of the high-powered cars in the UK, and I guarantee you, if you ask any of those owners, they will be more than happy with the service from Tune4 Performance. If you've had your car mapped by Tune4 Performance, let us know in the comments below, because they are awesome. So you've got all your bits and bobs, and now that big question that everybody's been asking for is the turbo. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my turbo, which probably not many people know, and in fact I don't think I've ever shared it on YouTube. So the turbo itself was called a PA250 turbo. Now it was called the PA250 turbo on the basis of it being a production turbo being built by Evolution Turbo in Italy for Pro Alpha to sell on as part of a product. I was the first car in the UK, and still am the first car in the UK, and probably the only car in the UK with the PA250 turbo. And obviously, for obvious circumstances, the fact that Pro Alpha pretty much doesn't exist anymore, and Evolution Turbo have been coming up with new turbos, etc. And the fact that Chris from Pro Alpha at the time didn't really buy it and didn't decide to go down the route of using Evolution Turbo anymore, it means that my specific turbo is very unique. And that turbo is pretty much built from a GT240 Garrett housing with a billet wheel in the middle. If you compare the inlets of my turbo against the Garrett GT1446, the 1446 has an inlet diameter of 55mm and mine has an inlet diameter of 60mm. So it's a bit more in terms of free flow from the inlet when you're sucking in all the cold air. It's a lot more of a laggier turbo, you all know that, I don't need to tell you. But what options do you have available to you now if you wanted to hit the 250 bhp mark? And which ones are going to be your best modifications to choose? Well, we now have a wider range of turbos available. Now, likes of Turbo Technics have now come to the table with their KO3 or KO4 turbo, I can't remember, but Laura Croft has put it on her car and she's managed to hit the 250 mark as well, which is awesome. You've naturally got my car's turbo, the PA250, which pretty much doesn't exist. It's not something you can buy. However, if you wanted something similar, you can go and speak to Evolution Turbo over in Italy and tell them that you want something like my PA250 turbo, and they would probably recommend something along those lines. Simone can pretty much fabricate any turbo, and he does them pretty well. A lot of the high-powered cars have got those turbos put on. You've naturally got the GT1446, which is fundamentally the best turbo ever. on the Abarth 595, in my opinion, with regards to spool, with regards to performance, with regards to everything. But if you go one step further with that turbo and you go down the hybrid route, which is obviously something that some of the guys on the forums have done, you will see 250 horsepower. And I know, Adam's got 255 bhp in that car. And that turbo, for me, in my honest opinion, is the turbo you want to get. If you're going to spend the money, and I've had numerous conversations with people around what turbo they should get, and should they go down the PA250 route or speak to Evolution to try and create what I've got, or go down the route of a hybrid 1446, I've always steered people towards that route. Now, you may not necessarily get a 250 bhp car from a standard 1446, but it will feel just as good, believe me. If you really want 250, a hybrid 1446 is the way forward, but believe me, it's not cheap. Then you've got the good old-fashioned TD04 turbo. TD04 turbo will do well over 250 horsepower, but it needs the supporting mods behind it. I've seen TD04s doing 270, 280, but they've also had forge engines and they've got cams, etc. So you've got to be mindful with how much money you want to spend. But finally, you've got things like the Borg Warner turbos as well, and the GT17. So turbos are not really lacking supply versus demand. You can get them. It's more around the effort it will take and the parts you're going to need to do and the cutting and the bending to get them all to fit. So if you have the opportunity to get a hybrid 1446, that's the way to go. If you found this information about how to get your car to your Abarth to 250 bhp informative, guys, please leave a like. Like I said, let's try and get to 300 likes in this video. There are hundreds of modifications that you can do to your Abarth, whether it's a Punto, whether it's a 500, 595, even a Spider now. But guys, this video here gives you what is, in my opinion, my best modifications. You can go the route that you want to go down. I hope you enjoyed my green screen presentation. If you have, please make sure to like, share and subscribe. And guys, I'm going to see you all on the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.